Hello everyone, I wanted to give a quick introduction to a new capability that we've added to the latest Simplink SDKs, specifically a functionality called SysConfig, short for System Configuration. The goal with this particular capability is to allow users to graphically configure their Simplink microcontrollers. Today what we're enabling in this early release is the ability to enable and configure your TI driver peripheral APIs through again, graphical interface. And I wanted to demonstrate some of that capability here very quickly for those that are interested in trying out this new functionality. In addition to configuring TI driver APIs, you also have the ability to configure your device pin muxing, which allows you to enable and configure the pins being used by your particular software. So to get up and running, you'll download the latest SDKs, and you'll have the ability to then import any of those projects into your IDE, in this case Code Composer Studio. So I'll go ahead and do that and right-click here and click on Import CCS Projects. And from here I can browse and navigate to my SDK, and inside of my SDK is the examples folder. But what we've done here to enable SysConfig in this early release is provide you with a SysConfig preview folder, which you can then expand and see some of the examples that we've added that have SysConfig support built in. So you can pick any one of these examples. I'll go ahead and choose ADC single channel for example. And from there I'll import any one of these example variants into my IDE. And here, what we'll see are a couple of key differences with the introduction of SysConfig. First and foremost is the introduction of this .sysconfig file. Users can double-click this, and this will launch the System Configuration Graphical Interface, or dashboard. And this is where you have the ability to, again, add and enable your TI drivers, depending on what you need to do within your application code. Because this is the single-channel ADC example, you'll see that a few peripherals are already enabled and configured appropriately, such as the ADC driver, the display driver, which also leverages the UART driver for sending your ADC readings to a terminal over a UART interface, for example. A couple of things while we're here. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the configuration options available for the ADC driver. You'll see things like ADC sampling duration. You can also change the name of how you access this driver by simply typing it here within this field. You also have the ability of choosing which particular ADC input pin you would like to use, and only appropriate options will be presented to you. And the benefit here is this allows you to almost feel confident, again, that this will be a valid input into the configuration. Had you been doing this by hand, that does have the opportunity to introduce some potential hardware conflicts. This, however, will only present to you valid options as you're doing your configuration. In addition to that, you have the ability to click here to see certain user preferences. You can also look at the code that's being generated. And what you'll see here is SysConfig will actually generate you a board C and board H file. And these board C and board H files are dynamic based on the configuration that you enable within the graphical interface. So as an example, if I were to add in a GPIO driver, you'll see that this GPIO code block is dynamically added to the board H file and board C files. So this again allows you to very quickly get to a point where you can start your application development and spend most of your time there building differentiated products. And allows you to feel confident in having a valid configuration with the help of this dynamic graphical interface. So if you do make a selection here that might introduce a conflict, you'll actually see these green check marks turn into red X's, which will allow you to focus on where you need to resolve some of those potential resource conflicts that you might have with a given configuration. In addition to that, you also have the ability to look at a board view, and this allows you to see which pins are being used for a given Launchpad development kit, for example. So hovering over these pins on the booster pack header, you'll see that these are being used for UART TX and UART RX. You also see some onboard components as well, such as LEDs and push buttons, but this particular example doesn't leverage those, so those resources aren't configured and that's why they're not showing up as green. So the other component here is because SysConfig is generating a board C and board H based on your inputs to the graphical interface, you actually don't have a board C board H file yet in your application code. That will be dynamically generated when you hit the debug button inside of the IDE. So I'll go ahead and click on this button, and this will trigger a command line interface to then generate the board C board H files for you. So I'll go back to the edit view. And what you'll see is that once my application is done building, the code will be generated and it will show up here inside of a debug folder. So we'll give it a second here to finish building. Okay, so I actually don't have a Launchpad development kit plugged in, so it's obviously not going to be able to connect to a Launchpad. So I'll hit cancel here, but what you will see is that the board C board H file is indeed generated, and it does show up here in the debug folder. So if I double click on this file here, you'll see the code that was dynamically generated based on your configuration. And now you can jump into application development. You can start building your application and not have to worry about configuring and enabling your peripherals and drivers. So that's really what we've got here so far. Again, this is a early capability that we wanted to expose to users for feedback. If you have any ideas or questions or improvement ideas, certainly let us know, and feel free to leverage our engineer-to-engineer ADE forums for capturing that feedback. So again, this is a quick little preview to SysConfig, a new capability for Simplink MCUs, and we're very excited to see how you use this tool so that you can create differentiated applications very quickly. Thank you very much, and happy coding.